Influencers, inspiration, and Instagram. This is Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Here's Conor Begley.
So excited. Second interview of the day, second interview ever. Wow. You are the number 2 person. And I can't be more excited for this interview either. So for background, I met Jordynn a little while ago, maybe a few years ago.
Yes.
While you were at ColourPop. Mm-hmm. You gave me my first official tour of the ColourPop facilities, which was so cool. I got to make my own eyeshadow, Super Shock Shadow, which was amazing. Which was also, that was the product you guys launched with, right?
Mm-hmm. That's our OG baby.
There you go. Okay, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So first of all, I wanted to really thank the Ipsy team again, specifically Nick and Robert, who have helped us set up this amazing studio, which happened in all of a morning, which is pretty wild.
Great.
Yeah, so I want to thank them as well as the team that helped coordinate it, Doak, Elizabeth, and Jen. So I want to start with that. Second, I am so excited today. I feel like I have the second half of the ColourPop magic on here. And Ashton's actually still in the studio with us, which is super fun. So we might have her hop in with a few comments here and there. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so the reason I'm so excited is, for those that don't know, Jordynn was the first marketing hire at ColourPop. It actually started while she was still in school, which is wild because now ColourPop is the number 1 brand we track in all of EMV, which is a really big accomplishment, and is growing at, like I said in the last episode, over 108% year over year, when the whole industry is down 8%. So just an unbelievable acceleration over the last 5 years. So I'm so excited to learn more about that because now I get to grill you with all the questions I would want to ask you if I could get an hour of your time, and now I haven't. It's great. And so that's why I'm so excited today. And then separately, what's also really exciting is Jordynn has launched her own brand called Insert Name Here with Sharon and Kevin. So Sharon Pack and Kevin Gould, right?
Yep.
And so we'll get to talk about that first. And I think first we'll talk about your background, then we'll talk a little bit about Insert Name Here and, what that entrepreneurial journey was like for those that want to learn about it. And then we'll talk about the early days of ColourPop and just what that was like.
Sounds good.
Does that feel
I'm
good?
excited.
Okay, so first off, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell them a little bit. I just learned that you were formerly a farm girl, which is not what I would have expected.
Yeah.
So tell me about this is even really far back. What's it like to be a farm person? I don't know.
A farm person. A farmer.
A farmer.
Yeah.
What did your family farm? And what was that? Or just tell me about that experience and then how you ended up in LA and
Yeah. So actually I would say that my family are ranchers versus farmers. Okay. So I misled you a little bit earlier.
Okay.
And a lot of people actually don't know the difference between farmer and rancher.
Cattle?
Yes, cattle. Yep. So we did cattle, sheep, stuff like that. And I was...
Animals versus vegetables?
Exactly.
Yep.
No, we didn't do any corn we had our own garden, but we weren't mass
producing.
Do
ranchers look down on farmers?
No, I think it's mostly geographic location.
Okay.
So in Montana and Wyoming, I would say bulk of people are farmers.
Okay.
Or ranchers.
You grew up in Montana.
I grew up in both actually, because my parents are divorced, so my time was fairly split, and both very, very small towns. But my original hometown, very small. It's a population of 300.
Okay, there you go.
As we were talking a little bit earlier, but
that's wild. That's my high school class.
Yes,
there's 300 people.
That high school class, there was 6 kids. In the high school class.
How do you have teachers? Do teachers have to be multidisciplinary?
Yeah, all the teachers are multidisciplinary, but then also a lot of the classes are combined. So basically kindergarten through, I think, 3rd grade combined. Most of middle school combined.
Wow, kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Yeah.
So it's one teacher teaching 7 classes to...
3 kids.
Kids of...
Essentially.
That's insane.
Flexible, I guess. But
how was that experience? Were there advantages to it? Because you had continuity, right? You had the same teacher over time that you could develop a relationship with. And were there any advantages to it?
I think some of the advantages is there's a lot more one-on-one than probably in a larger school. 100%. So you get a lot more individual attention. But then also when I started going to school in Montana, it's a little bit of a bigger class size. I think there were 90 kids in my class, and that was huge for me. I was wow, holy cow, we're big time now. But even I would say at both of those schools, I think it's also like less cliquey because it's more of like a family vibe because you really grow up with these people. So when I hear stories from my friends who grew up in LA, I'm just like, wow, I don't know how you did that because it's like a whole world that you kind of have to deal with, and there's so many complexities. And at such a small school, there's not people aren't really like getting in trouble. They're not really up to that much because everybody in town knows exactly, like they'll see you in the truck with your new boyfriend, and your mom knows before you get home that you're dating somebody.
There's only 3 guys you can date.
Exactly,
so,
and word travels fast, so it's like the whole town is your babysitter.
That's interesting. Both in good and bad ways.
Yeah, I think I would say very sheltered. When I actually moved to LA and I started going to Pepperdine, I didn't know who the Kardashians were. I didn't know who Ellen DeGeneres was. I was too scared to drive on the freeway, so I got one of my first jobs. I was a jockey at the racetracks, and my friend would drive me every morning at 4 a.m. because I was too scared.
You mean jockey, like riding the horses?
Yeah.
I feel like I like turned over a rock and there's just like stuff I did not expect underneath it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so so many questions. Okay, so 1, why did you move to LA? Like what made you decide to move there? 2, we're getting so off topic here, but would love to know about the jockey experience, just briefly.
That was really short-lived. I can tell you that really briefly because I basically did it for a month. I rode horses growing up. Obviously, rodeo is a sport at my school. Like, you can letter in rodeo. And so when I moved here, I just really wanted to keep riding horses, and so I like signed up for this jockey thing, and luckily I'm the right size for jockeying. So
well, that's because you want to be small, right? You want to be like the guys that do jockeying or like 100 pounds. 110 pounds.
Yep.
Yeah,
very dangerous sport, but
super dangerous. People
it's one
die.
of the most dangerous. Actually, you get trampled.
Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't have any accidents, but I only did it for a month, and one of the reasons was because I was too scared to drive on the freeway, and my friend, after a month of driving me at 4 a.m. was like, we're not doing this anymore. I was like, okay, I'm going to do so. I started being a nanny.
I can't believe you're a jockey.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Short-lived. Wait, what was the original question?
LA. Why?
Oh, LA, yeah. So when I was growing up, I always wanted to live somewhere warm because it's freezing in Montana and Wyoming, like negative 20 degrees in the winter. And so I only applied to schools that were warm, essentially. And then my family, they told me ever since I was little, you're going to have to pay for school, so you're going to have to figure it out. So I just applied to schools, and wherever gave me the biggest scholarship, I went. I had never been before. I had no idea. Well, I thought I was going to be, when I went to Pepperdine, it's actually, I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a little bit. It's a small school, and it's in Malibu, which Malibu is kind of the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I thought I was going to be like in the city, and I show up, and I'm in...
And there's like horse ranches and like...
Yeah, you're in like a tiny beach town. Everybody's like, oh, is there culture shock? And I was like, no, because Malibu is basically Montana and Wyoming. Like,
that's funny.
And I didn't have
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
No, it's tiny.
So you were really stranded out there.
Oh, I was stranded. Yeah. And it's also a very bougie school. Like a lot of Lamborghinis, Ferraris. I went to school with like
private
princesses.
School. Yeah.
I showed up with like a little suitcase. I had nothing. I had like a couple coats, and I had like nothing that I brought. People in my dorm are like wallpapering the walls, like curtains. They brought in like their own beds. Like I was like, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah, I went to a state school, and like that was not the experience. Like, I mean, there's plenty of people that had money, but it was not the same kind of situation.
Yeah, it was pretty unique.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I mean, Ashton also went to Santa Clara, which is a private school.
Yes.
And I'm sure I know people that went to Santa Clara and very similar experience.
Yeah,
so,
I was shocked.
Okay, so you're at Pepperdine, and then how do you go from Pepperdine to ColourPop? Like, how does that happen? Because you were still at Pepperdine when you started working there, right?
Yeah, so
Was it even called ColourPop at the time, or was it like Seed Beauty?
No, it wasn't. It didn't even have a name.
Or Spat. Oh, okay,
it had
unnamed.
No name.
So you applied for unnamed company.
I didn't actually apply. They came to me.
Okay.
So I was a nanny. That kind of ended up being, when jockeying didn't work out, I turned to nannying. And I was nannying for a family, a really amazing family. They took really good care of me, taught me a lot, like what Coach was. And I guess one of their friends, who were the Nelsons, who are the owners of Seed Beauty and ColourPop, they were another family that I had nannied for a couple times, and they were considering, at the time they had Spats Laboratories, and they were considering launching their own brand, but it was really, really early stages. They didn't even really know what they wanted to do. So they were kind of asking around for somebody who was like a younger girl who was into makeup, and I at the time actually didn't wear any makeup, but I was really into hair. I did all the braid bars at all these babysitting parties, and so I went to the interview. I went up there and met Laura Nelson and instantly was like in love with her. She's amazing. Very charismatic.
Yeah.
And so
super charismatic.
Yeah, she's great.
She's moving.
Yeah, she's so cool. She's really cool.
Yeah.
And so, but it's in Oxnard.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And so I'm driving up there and I'm like going through strawberry fields and like it's in these like old warehouses and we didn't have the Seed Beauty campus at the time, so it really was like warehouse vibes.
So for those that don't know LA, how would you describe like LA, like if you're on a map? Where's LA? Where's Malibu? Where's Oxnard?
Okay, so LA, I feel like most people probably know where that is. So Malibu is obviously on the coast, slightly more north.
Yep.
And then Oxnard is from LA is like an hour and a half north.
Yeah.
Also on the coast, but not beach vibes. Like Oxnard's not cool. How it was described to me has been described to me and continues to be described to me by people who come and visit Oxnard is like the armpit of California.
So I was born in Ventura, California, which is really close to Oxnard.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And I think I actually lived in Oxnard. I didn't tell Ashton this. I lived in Oxnard for 6 months. Okay. When I was like really little, like 6 months. Well,
we gotta get out.
Yeah, well then we moved north and whatever. But so I was in Oxnard for a very brief time. Yeah. Don't remember any of it, obviously. It was like less than a year old.
I lived there when I started working at ColourPop. I ended up living there for like 3 years. Now I actually really like Oxnard.
It's like grown on you?
Yeah, I really like it. I lived in like a newer area, but it was really cute, and I kind of like the agriculture vibes. There's not as much traffic, and so it has a bad rap, but I actually like it.
Yeah, I mean it's closer to what you're used to, right? What you grew up with.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Oh, we're saying how I got there.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So nannying, get recommended. Drive up to Oxnard. I'm like, there's no way I'm working here. There's no way. I just can't drive here. This is so far and in the middle of nowhere, and I don't even like beauty. And so then I meet Laura and I'm like, wow, she's really cool. And I was so poor at the time. Like, I was paycheck to paycheck. The family I was nannying for was basically taking care of me. So,
almost like an au pair, basically.
Yeah. Although they were like my au pair.
Yeah.
I was babysitting their kids, but they were taking care of me.
Yeah.
They were really amazing. So then, I basically told her that. I was like, I can't really afford to do this. Like, I can't.
It's
I'm
just
nannying.
too long.
Yeah, it's far. I'm nannying, and they're like, we're gonna make this work for you. So like, let's do this. So I was like, okay. So
that's cool. So they clearly liked you if they're willing to go out of their way.
Yeah, we hit it off. We really hit it off right away. So then I started interning for them, and they didn't even tell me what I was going to be doing. They're just like, you're going to start interning. So then I started interning, working with Erin, who is product development and still at product development for ColourPop. And we basically were just like sent off on this project, and they were like, we want you to make like mood boards. What kind of brand would you want to do? So long story short, I was the first official ColourPop hire.
Yeah.
And I did all of the concepting and branding for the brand. Super amazing experience. I didn't even know.
Like 21 years old.
Yeah.
So
I was like hosting focus groups at school. I was hosting focus groups like at the hotel, and it was amazing because Laura out the gate gave me so much autonomy. Like a week in, I'm just was owning this whole thing, and
you wonder if their expectations were pretty low. They're like, this probably isn't gonna work out, but like, give it a shot.
I'm curious, like, what their expectations were at the time.
Well, so I listened to the podcast that they were on, and they were clearly like, we want to do this.
Yeah.
But they also were like, let's just get started. Let's give it a shot, and we'll learn from there, which I think is a really cool way to do it.
They're so fast, so I think they were just like, just get somebody in here, build something, and we'll figure it out as we go. And that's what we did. And we almost did actually a subscription box. And that was kind of the original direction, is we were going to make these really cool, like an Ipsy model.
Subscription boxes have done well.
Yeah, it was basically like an Ipsy model. This was at a time when Ipsy was like right at the beginning,
just starting,
like super popping off. Like everybody was talking about it. So I think that was maybe something that was kind of inspirational. And then obviously they could manufacture all their own makeup. So they were thinking, we'll make all this cool makeup and we'll do these subscription boxes. Yep. But when we were in doing all of our focus groups, people were more excited about the fact that we could make really on-trend makeup and make it affordable, and so then it kind of morphed into this ColourPop direction.
Yep.
So I basically just worked on that for essentially 2 years. Just the branding, concepting, naming the products, building the website, building all the responses for customer service, FAQ. Like, I really got to do, I think, essentially everything. And even then when the brand ended up launching, right before it launched, they're like, okay, we'd like to hire you full time. And so I didn't have any other job offers, so I started doing that. And then they're like, and we need another one of you, because I was pretty much I was the only hire at the time, because Aaron was still doing spats work as well. Okay. And so they were like, we need another one of you. So I'm telling all my friends, like, you guys have to apply to this job. Come to apply to this job. Nobody wants to work in Oxnard. Nobody wants to work for a startup. So nobody would apply, and Laura and John, per usual, are like, we got to get going. So instead, I was talking to my mom. This is one of my favorite stories, because she said, instead of picking a friend, you should pick somebody who you worked with in school, who you really like vibed with, because you're going to be working close to this person. I was like, oh, you're right. That's a better angle. So I
don't want to derail the story, but what's really interesting about that, there's a really good book called The Founder's Dilemma by a guy named Noam Wasserman. And he studies all of these high growth companies, primarily technology companies. And then he looks at the relationship of the founders prior to starting these companies, and like what was most predictive of success. And so, you've got basically 4 pre-existing relationships. You can be friends, you can be family, you can be, you don't know each other at all, right? Or you can be former coworkers. And coworkers was the most successful, then friends, then random acquaintances, then family in terms of predicting success. And that's because, when you have a friendship, like, you don't want to give hard feedback to that friend because, you don't want to hurt the friendship. And, and family is even more aggressive than that. And former coworkers worked really well because you know how to work with each other, whatever. So your mom was way ahead of her time.
And it was very foreshadowing now, as you probably will hear the rest of my story. Because Sharon, who I end up recommending, we worked on a few class projects together, and we were both very just like heads down working, not very social. So I recommended her, and she basically applied the same situation as me. She didn't want to go back to, she's from a tiny town in Arizona, very similar background.
Funny.
Her mom was a truck driver. Her dad died when
I wonder if Pepperdine intentionally tries to recruit people from like different backgrounds.
Potentially, because very similar, which is surprising. So I recommended her. She applied. She also was like, I don't really want to work at a startup, but I don't want to go back to Arizona. So she started working with me, and her and I kind of manned the ship, I guess, with John and Laura the first 2 years. We didn't even really build out the team that much, and we did everything. We were like packing the packages, like driving it to UPS. ColourPop was so small that there was one girl, because everything is made by hand at ColourPop still to this day. So there was one girl, the order would come in, she'd go into the back, she'd mix the formula. At this time it was only Super Shock Shadow, so mix the formula, make the shadow, bring it up front. Aaron Lindsay would schematic it in the box. I would handwrite the card. We'd load it up in the car. There would be like 6 packages, and we'd drive it over to UPS. And now
But that's the kind of stuff, right? Like a handwritten note in a package is like not something a big brand's going to do. There's some really famous startup people that, or there's a guy named Paul Graham who founded Y Combinator, and he talks about doing things that don't scale. So like when you're first starting a company, you have to do things that are going to make you stand out. Like Airbnb, 100%. They're kind of famous for this. They put a button on the website that said, take professional pictures of your home. Because at the time, people didn't know how to take good pictures of like their apartment. And so you'd press that button, it would send an email to one of the founders, who would then drive to your apartment with a camera, take photos of your house, and like post it on to like get them going, right? But it's the same kind of thing. Like that's what you have to do at the beginning, and that's actually how you stand out.
Definitely. ColourPop did, I think that was a big part of ColourPop's success, and that's another thing that I found with Insert Name Here, which has been interesting to do, because we're doing those things that are not scalable, but then seeing how some of them I can bridge back to ColourPop in a scalable way. So
of course, it's been
really kind of fun to be doing both a startup, like a bootstrap startup, with now a powerhouse like ColourPop, to see kind of how you can loop things back, and it is really interesting. It kind of reminds me of Hello Kitty. One of their taglines is small package, big surprises, or something like that. And
small package, big surprises.
Something like that. Probably not that, but something close.
We'll do like a fact check after, and we'll make sure we get it right.
For sure. But it's something that stuck with me since we work with them, because it's true that people love little surprises, whether they're scalable or not. And I do think that is so important for laying the groundwork of a brand that is relatable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that connects with people.
Exactly.
Really cool. Well, let's dive into Insert Name Here a little bit, and then we'll go back to the ColourPop stuff. Because I'm sure like this is, this is so new and so exciting. And so tell me about, so for insert name here, like what made you decide to start a company? What, why the space that you're in? Maybe describe insert name here for those people that haven't heard of it or don't know what it is. Like, what are the products? What's the price point? That kind of stuff. And then we'll dive into more and more questions. But just like, what's the brand, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, insert name here is a hair brand, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but and we do hair. So, think Ariana Grande ponytail. She actually wore a ponytail in one of her most recent music videos with Vogue, which is super exciting. But we have kind of the angle that we decided to take was, you were asking me earlier, is it more prestige or prestige? And I think that we're a little bit of both, because one of the things that we learned at ColourPop is that one of the things that make it so successful is that it's really high quality at an accessible price point. And so that's something that really resonates with us. And so, but hair's a little bit different because we're not going to be making it in-house, No, as far as price point, but we did think like a lot of people want to play around with hair and they just can't afford to do it. So we have synthetic options and we have human hair options. Obviously, the human hair options are definitely more on the prestige end and price point wise, that's where they align. And it's really, really high quality. Like that's something that's so important to us. And so it is prestige and it lines up with other prestige brands if it doesn't beat them, I have to say. And then we have more the synthetic options, which are a little bit more for experimentation. And if you're just getting your feet wet into kind of the hair world, because it is kind of a newer space, I think that people aren't as comfortable with. And so these are more experimental pieces, but very transformative. So even though they're synthetic, a lot of them, even if we did have, in most cases, we have the option of synthetic or human hair, and I typically wear the synthetic one over the human one.
Interesting.
Because you just can't even tell the difference, but it's just like a mental thing that
just people don't they want that.
They don't like the word synthetic, but I mean you really can't tell for the most part.
At this point they've been working on it for so long, you'd have to imagine the technology's gotten to like,
it's amazing. And in some cases it's lighter weight than human hair, and so a lot of these hair products that you're wearing as human hair are so heavy. Like that ponytail that Ariana Grande wears, that is human hair, and that is heavy. Like her wearing that around all day, she's a superstar in a whole other way that we haven't discussed enough. But so I think that they're definitely both options, and there's positives and negatives to both. But that was kind of the angle, is that we wanted accessible hair that's really fun, transformative, and experimental.
And so why hair? Like what made you decide like this is the category?
Yeah.
Like especially being somebody who wasn't, I mean, it sounds like you were into hair before, which is
like
maybe
braids,
that's the
though.
reason. Yeah.
So we decided to go into hair because we recognize that hair now is in a similar space that colored cosmetics were in when we launched ColourPop.
Okay.
So when we launched ColourPop, we kind of noticed that a lot of the kind of OG conglomerates, they didn't know how to do social media. They didn't really have like a digital presence. They weren't educational. Their content wasn't relevant. It wasn't like speaking to millennials and Gen Z. And so I think that ColourPop was really a part of the big first wave to take colored cosmetics digitally and socially. And we recognized the opportunity to do the same thing with hair. If you think about hair, I think there's only maybe only one brand that really people could name off the top of their head in the hair space. And it's not because there's a lack of interest, but it's just brands haven't done a good job bringing it to digitizing it, I guess, and bringing it to the millennial Gen Z customer.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's Sharon and I's expertise from our ColourPop experience. And so we were really excited to find an adjacent category that wasn't in beauty, that we felt had a lot of the same opportunities as ColourPop.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then obviously, I mean, I guess it kind of goes without saying why you decided to work with Sharon again. But, how did you think about that initial founding team? Like, how did you think about like, okay, or maybe who had the first idea? Was it something you guys came up with together? And then, you've got Kevin, who's also involved. Like, how did it all come together? What does everybody focus on? Yeah.
So Sharon and I obviously ended up working at ColourPop for 5 years together. And that wasn't always, we were kind of like the face of the brand and everybody knew us as best friends, but it wasn't always the case. Like we really, especially because there's no structure at ColourPop, they called us Jordynn, which a lot of people still call us Jordynn. And it's like our team nickname, and that name actually originated because John and Laura, the co-founders of ColourPop, had no idea who did what. Literally no idea. So they would
we just know stuff's happening.
They know somebody's doing it. It's one of us. So it would be like, hey, Jordynn. Literally, they just started referring to us as Jordynn. And then it really took off. And so then... But that being said, since there was no structure, and it still was, her and I are like very like, we love to work, we love to grind out, we always want to make sure we're doing a good job. So naturally, we're pretty competitive. And so they're just the two of us with no guidance, no structure, and a lot of times like there really wasn't any guidance.
And this really fast-growing company.
In a company that's exploding, so many opportunities. Like if you want it and you take it, it's yours, and you're gonna own it now. Like whatever we ended up dividing early on, like we owned for 5 years. Like, So I think that there were some rough spots where we really duked it out. Like we were going pretty head to head on things. But the thing that
going back to it, if you guys were family or if you were like really close, just like friends, not working together, you might not have done that in a constructive 100%. Way, right? Like it might not have, like you'd be afraid to do that. Yeah. And
you wouldn't have done it in a constructive way, but you wouldn't have been constantly challenging each other, which I think is one of the reasons why we were maybe, like we really pushed ourselves in our marketing roles because we were competing with the other person and the other person was a badass.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But, so I think we really duked it out, but to your point, constructively, because even though at sometimes it maybe wasn't very constructive, we always were able to kind of bring it back, and we would, and even if it was for the simple fact of like, I can't continue on like this. So we did have a couple.
We got to rethink how this is working.
We had a couple conversations like that of like, wow, this is a really shitty work environment when like we hate each other, so we're gonna have to talk it out. And
let's totally start a brand together.
But so that really happened like the first 2 or 3 years of a lot of like head to head where one of us always stepped up and was like, no, we're going to talk about this. And we're going to figure out like what the go forward is.
Which is super important. I mean, I think both in work relationships as well as I think, I know that my wife and I, we have all the time where we clash and it's like, but you always have to be willing to come back and be like, hey, okay, I know we're disagreeing on this, but let's figure it out. Let's work through it, et cetera.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of what led us to, after doing that for so long, then we got to the point where we're not even afraid of the clash. Like, it's kind of like, let's see, like, what we can kind of come head to head on here, because we always did come out in a much better place. And then I think we also started to learn that we had very different skill sets. So there really is no reason to compete because we were truly better together. I always say she's the yin to my yang. Our skill sets could not be more opposite. I'm constantly learning from her. And so over time, we were like, we actually should always be together. Like, we are great together. There's nobody else I would rather do a business with. You have to really trust them. You have to really believe that they're going to pull their weight. And I think that we just obviously developed a great base. So after we were at ColourPop for a while, and ColourPop's constantly incubating new brands, and so we got to be really involved on the initial incubation of multiple brands, and we learned we really love building things. That's like the most exciting thing, different.
It's so fun.
Yeah, it's so fun.
And it's like, and I think it's fun, and it's like, I think a lot of people are a little afraid to do it the first time. And you're just like, well, let's just do it. Who cares? If it works, great. If it doesn't, whatever. Like, we did this podcast in 2 days. It's like, well, like, let's see if it works. The worst thing that happens is we have a bunch of tape that we don't use. Whatever, like same kind of thing. So anyway, so you realized like we really love launching brands.
Yeah, and so we decided, we were always like, well, we'll do something together later. And then we had, obviously we're texting all the time, but we had like a special notepad where we were always putting in ideas of like brands, and they were really bad. Like we were thinking like a new Tupperware brand or like a couch brand. I almost had her sold on a couch brand. And Sharon is very black and white, like cut and dry. She's like, that's a terrible idea, like all the time. So I'm always throwing her these ideas and she's telling me they're really bad. And then I was like, oh, you know what, hair, what about wigs? And she was like, okay, that's the idea.
Interesting.
And a lot of that was because we were seeing so many influencers starting to play with wigs, and I wanted to try wigs. And so I ordered a bunch online, and it was really hard to find them. You end up just going on Amazon. You have no idea where they're coming from. They show up. I tried to get that like Kim K icy wig with the dark roots. It literally, it smelled terrible. The roots were Sharpied on with like a permanent marker. Like it didn't even meet at the end. It was just like two black bands essentially. So after playing around with it a little bit, we were like, yeah, there's definitely like, if we're interested in it and we're seeing our influencer friends are interested in it, there has to be an interest, and nobody's talking about it.
Of course.
So once we were like, okay, we're going to do this, well, the idea came to mind that, okay, yeah, this might be the idea. And then ironically, at the same time, Kevin Gould, who we had previously met through ColourPop at a BeautyCon event.
Okay.
He's one of the original investors in BeautyCon. And I'd given him a tour as well. So
there you go.
Those tours really making the connection.
They're working.
So he slid into Sharon and I's DMs. And but like
slightly different context, but business context.
Very modern.
I love that business is being done through Instagram.
Right?
It's just wild to me.
Yeah.
I mean, like obviously on the influencer side, but like you're working with Kevin Gould, and he slid into your DMs.
And
then what happened?
And we were kind of like, what the heck is this? So bizarre. And then he slid in individually. Okay. And then he was like, I'd love to meet him for dinner. And we were like, what is this? And then we were talking to each other about it. And then he group messaged us because we didn't answer him. We were like, no, we don't have time for this. So then he group messaged us and he's like, I would really like to take you guys to dinner.
Yeah.
But together. And so then, which I think was less intimidating because originally when somebody comes to your DMs, you're like, But then when he grouped, we were like,
Okay.
Extra,
this is not for like,
he's not trying to date us.
Yeah.
So then we go to dinner with him, and he's very charismatic also. Kevin, he could sell you a paper bag.
There you go.
So
I mean, he slid into my LinkedIn. He
does not surprise me.
We wrote about insert name here, and then I got like a message immediately, and I was like, oh, hey.
He's the king.
I haven't met him before.
You need to meet him. He's very charismatic, super, super scrappy. Also, like, really great growth story that is really inspiring. But so we met with him, and he was like, what are your guys' ideas? And Sharon and I are very skeptical, so we were like not saying anything, nothing. Wouldn't say a peep, but he was like, I really want to work with you guys. And we were pretty cold, and then he kept meeting up with us, like, repeatedly.
Kept reaching out.
Yeah, we were going to dinner like once a month, and then like on the third or fourth time.
Which is pretty flattering that he's putting all this time into. Yeah.
And he's also very inspiring to talk to because he is so like amped all the time. So he did get us really excited because we had ideas and we wanted to launch a brand, but we weren't thinking at all like we're gonna launch a brand right now. And but he was like so confident and sure and stoked that he got us kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe this is a thing. And then eventually we told him what our idea was, which was the hair. And literally the next day, I'm not joking you, we met that night. It was a late dinner at like 10 p.m. The next morning at 6 a.m. he sends us a 15-page report on the whole market space and is like, this is a great idea, we should do it. And we were like, oh my gosh, really intimidated. And we were like, he's gonna steal our idea. So we were kind of like, oh my gosh. But then you're
underestimating your own role in this. You guys are pretty important to the brand.
I guess, yeah.
It's not just like, oh, it's a hair, there's plenty of people that want to have hair extensions.
Yes. So then he sends us this report and we're still kind of hemming and hawing. Then like a week later, he's like, can you come meet me at the office? We go to his office. He has all these interviews lined up for us. We're meeting like product development. We're meeting like these kids from USC who are like website builders. Like he's ready to roll.
Wow.
So when we meet these people,
this is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's really cool. So we meet these people and we meet one of them who's a product development, and she's like, and the whole thing is very, like, how it all came together, very magical. Like, we've had so many things happen where I'm just like, how the fuck did that happen? Because, like, one of them being that we found this product development girl who's amazing. She's, like, the hair wizard. And now come to find out, now that we've been in this space for a while, she's, like, a unicorn.
Oh, wow. This is, like, not common?
There are none. We can't even find another one. Like,
wow.
Very difficult to find hair experts.
This is product development specifically?
Yeah, because it's just not a space that's tapped that much. And so got so lucky that we found her immediately. And we started working with her immediately. We started talking to Kevin in July. We launched the brand, a soft launch, in September. And wow. Yeah.
July to September. That's really
that
fast.
Was talking like our first dinner, not even like he didn't even know the concept for like 3 to 4 weeks.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, both that happened and that it can happen, right? Because like, 10 years ago, that's not possible.
No.
Like you can't turn that around from like a website perspective and all these other elements. That's wild. So then launched in September, and then how's it gone since then?
It's going great.
Yeah.
When we started,
and how are you balancing it? Because you're still at ColourPop too, right?
I am.
And Sharon's doing this full time.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So Sharon came over full time in March, and again, this is all a soft launch until this past April. We did more of an official thing because ColourPop didn't know that I was doing INH. I thought it was going to be like this little side, like a little hobby. I've heard of other people doing that, like Nancy Shop. And but then after about 3 months, it was really growing. We've grown quite a bit every month, like at least 40% month over month. And so by the time we're like 3 to 4 months in, we were like, oh wow, holy cow, this needs a lot more of our time. And it was just me, Sharon, and Kevin, and this product development girl, and we had a couple like interns. Like we had a kid from USC who built our entire website. Like they were just all these really scrappy kids just doing really cool things. But by March of 2019, we were like, okay, I gotta break the news. So then I told ColourPop. They were literally, I was mortified to tell them. Like I've never been more scared. I lost sleep for like a month prior to building up to this moment. And then I told Laura, and she literally could not have had a better response. She was so sweet, supportive, kind. We would like.
Well, she's an entrepreneur too, right? So like that's like I know that we get a ton of satisfaction out of seeing people launch their own things. Like we've had several of our alumni launch their own companies, and we try to be as supportive as we can, whether they're currently at the company or not. And so that's cool. That's awesome.
So great. And so now I'm at both brands. Which is another great thing that they've been really supportive of, because we're also not paying ourselves yet out of insert name here. So
of course.
ColourPop's super important to me. Also, I just love the brand. Like it's my first child.
Of course. I mean, like really from the ground up to being. I mean, it's literally the #1 brand we track, which is fucking wild. Like that's just crazy. Like I don't think people have it's hundreds of thousands of pieces of content created a year about ColourPop. Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Like
it's a beast. I don't think. I mean. Even now, and I didn't realize what a beast it was until I leave. Like once you're kind of in like a ColourPop bubble when you're there. You don't realize like what you have.
In the Oxnard bubble.
Yeah, because there's nobody around you. You're not like networking with other beauty brands.
No.
So and then you start your own brand, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, it's like, especially with the you've got the integrated manufacturing and all that. It's just such a big deal.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so. Couple more questions on insert name here. Then I want to dive really quickly into ColourPop. So what are your goals with the brand? Like, what do you want to do?
We want to be the biggest hair brand in the space.
There you go. Like it. Love it. How do you think about influencers within that strategy? Like, and how many of those, how much of the initial success is because you guys have built these relationships over the course of years? Like, how do you think about their role in the brand itself?
Yeah, influencers have been major for us.
Yeah.
We've been so lucky that so many people in the industry and influencers have been incredibly supportive of Sharon and I, and a lot of that is from our previous relationships with them. So we've gotten a ton of early support early on that was very organic, just because they were they're real friends of ours.
Of course.
So that's been really key for the brand. I also think since we are bootstrapped, we're in house. We're renting out like a work office space in another building, and so we don't have a ton of resources. And influencers they're creating all of our content. Like we rely very heavily on influencers for all aspects. We're also we do a ton of paid partnerships. Like that's a really big, but we have it set up like a lot more different than other brands, and it's something I think since the influencer space is changing literally every quarter, I would say, like a massive change.
Absolutely.
So a big part of our kind of strategy with insert name here has been to do something different, and all of our partnerships I think are kind of out of the box, and we're still fine-tuning a lot of them to see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, but we work very heavily with influencers, whether that's on paid content, general content creation like for our website, and
very cool. And then when you're thinking about kind of how to choose who to work with, how do you think about that?
We primarily look at engagement, which we're a little worried with the new Instagram changes, but
it has been in decline generally.
Yes, true. But a lot of the partners that we've worked with that we found the most success aren't the biggest influencers. It's the influencers with the best engagement. And
gotcha. Like the up and coming guys.
Yeah, up and coming, or even people who've been around for quite a while, and they're not really continuing to grow, but they have great engagement. Like we actually try to benchmark people who have 30% engagement for anybody that we're partnering with, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot of them, but they're not that big. And I mean, a lot. There's not a lot of them, but those are the people who are really going to convert, and they're usually much smaller, like in the 100K range. They're usually not bigger than 200K even. But those are the people who have kind of performed the best for us, and they're also the most excited to work with us because they are smaller.
So let's talk a little bit about. So obviously, you talked a little bit about paid partnerships within insert name here. Let's talk about ColourPop. So, I know that one of the core pillars of success for ColourPop has been the collaborations that you guys have done. Whether that's with Disney or it's with Kathleen or it's with, Becky or whatever. So what got you guys into that space first? And then how do you think about that? Like, how do you think about who to partner with? How many are we going to do a year? How involved are they in the product creation process? Like, I know I would love to learn a lot more about that. I know a lot of other people would love to learn a lot more about that too. So talk to me about that, because I know you're really intimately involved with that, I think, right?
Yeah, collabs are my baby. That's kind of my main focus currently.
Which is such a big part of the success of ColourPop.
Yeah, it's been one of our main pillars of the brand.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it first started, we were actually just talking about this in like a company meeting, but there was this girl on Instagram, Slave to Beauty was her name, and she was a really big fan of ours. She was posting us all the time, and we were like, oh, you know what we should do? And her whole feed was pink. She's actually still on Instagram. You can check her out, Slave to Beauty.
Nice.
Her whole feed was like hot pink, and so we really appreciate all the posts she was doing for us, and we made her a custom shade called Slave to Pink.
Okay.
And we gifted it to her, and we're like, hey, we made this for you, and we're also selling it on the site, and it like blew doors. At the time, we were tiny, like tiny. So blew doors, I don't know, maybe
give people
1,000
context.
units.
Like, what's tiny? Like, how much money is tiny? If you can remember back.
I would say maybe like unit wise, like if we sold like 200 units.
Okay, in a month.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
or I think at the time we launched with like 50 of them, 50 units, and we sold out in like 3 days, and we were like, oh my gosh, like this is huge, like this is crazy. So that was kind of our first trigger.
Especially as like a broke college student, you're like, this is so much money.
Yeah, well, all ColourPop at the time, I mean, we're hand delivering these packages to UPS, and now for reference, we're the biggest supplier to UPS or USPS on the West Coast. Like, we were driving these ourselves, and now we're number one. So it's a very large scale.
That's a mind-boggling statement you just made.
Mm-hmm. You would not believe the amount of packages.
There's a lot of companies in California.
Yeah, number one, USPS. Number one on Tribe, number one on USPS.
That is crazy. Okay.
So we did that, and we obviously noticed immediate success, and so we were like, oh, okay, what's a bigger way we can do this? So we did it with some other influencers, and we really kind of, right out the gate, we were really testing different audiences. So we did some lifestyle people, we did people who were just doing product flat lays, and then we were doing more beauty influencers, and obviously at the time there was a much larger correlation with beauty influencers, because it's just like a direct, it makes sense with their audience. And I would say one of the first, the first collab that really kind of set the stage for the program was with Kathleen Lights. And at the time she had 200K followers, and she was giving it.
What's she at now? Like a couple million?
Yeah. I think she's at like 3 or 5 maybe.
Yeah.
I'm really bad with numbers.
Yeah. I should know.
But she has amazing engagement, still has amazing engagement, and she's a really organic influencer. And so she had done a dedicated video about us, about a haul, and was just like over the moon about us. And so we flew her out from Miami, and we met with her, like so nice, so genuine. We ended up launching one lipstick with her. It's called Lumiere. Yeah. And that literally blew doors. Like it sold out instantly. People were freaking out. We got a ton of new followers. Like people love Kathleen, and she's actually a collaborator we still work with to this day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we collab with her even
don't let go of the golden
once or
goose.
Twice a year.
Yeah.
No,
and it's great for her too, right?
It's great. Yeah.
It's helped build her brand.
Exactly.
It's a
We've
mutually
totally
beneficial.
grown together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's such a great partner as far as like when we're like, hey, can you do this? This is gonna help your sales, like instantly. Like she gets it and she does it, and she also has a lot of really great creative concepts, which kind of falls into your other question of how do we pick our partners. And I would say there's a couple different ways that we pick them, but one of the main ways that we pick them is obviously at the ColourPop office, like we're concepting and coming up with ideas that we're excited about, that resonate with us, but that's like we're a bubble. And so when we're looking at partners, particularly influencers, not brands, we're looking for somebody who's going to bring something else to the table that's outside of what we would do. So a good example of that is the Perception palette with Shayla. That was our first collaboration with her, and it was very, very colorful. I really think she was one of the first people to go like full out in color, because at the time, this is when people were really into like oranges and yellows and stuff like that, but nobody was doing like these pops of color. And Shayla came in and did it, and I remember the first time that we showed the palette to the team, and they were all like, because it was just not something that we would launch. And it did amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
there's other people out there that have the same views as her, the same, it doesn't have to just be the people in this room that come up with ideas. Yeah.
It's kind of like bringing a consultant to the table with like just totally fresh ideas and being like, go run with it, like whatever you're interested in. And that's how we handle our collab program, is when we bring somebody in. I know a lot of them even come in and they're surprised, because they're like, well, in my past collabs, like I was given a table of product and they said, pick whatever you want, you can put it together and we'll launch it. Ours, we start from scratch. Like when we did our collab with Becky G, she's like, we did our first call with her.
This is the Ola Chola?
Well, we have...
Or that was not the original one. That's the most recent one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The original one was Salvaje.
Okay.
And we did our first call with her, and we're on the phone. We're like, what kind of shades are you thinking? And she's like, I'm envisioning the staccato and the streets of Mexico. And like telling us like the reds, and there's this special stone. And literally, that's what the shades are made out of. Erin Lindsay's on the phone, who's an amazing product developer. And she works so great with influencers because they'll be telling her stuff like, oh, I have this like purple couch that I just love, and it has these like sequins on it, and she'll be like, okay, yeah, I got it. I can make this a shadow.
Wow, there you go.
But that's basically the process. These people are starting from scratch. Like they'll bring in something weird and be like, I want to match this, and it'll be like a rock or like a nail or like a picture, like a weird picture on Pinterest of like a building, and you're like, okay, we're gonna make this a shadow.
Well, and I think ColourPop and Seed Beauty is in like a very unique position to do that.
Yes.
Like not everybody can do that. Like most people, it's going to take years to kind of get something like that done. You guys can be like, we're going to do this in a week. Mm-hmm.
Well, we've actually done it overnight before.
Wow. What was that story?
We did a collab with Dancing with the Stars.
I was told this was one of my earliest stories, and it was like it was a big catalyst for you guys early on, right?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't like, it's not like it was one of our biggest collaborations, but I think it really showed us like, wow, we can put together something pretty quick, and and like we can I don't know, it's just, I feel like it's so symbolic of ColourPop. Like if we want it done, we will figure out how to
find
get it
a way.
done. And it was with Rumor Willis. We literally, they told us like on a Thursday who was gonna win. We had it ready to go by Friday. It launched on like Saturday.
That's crazy.
Yeah, or maybe it's Sunday, whenever that airs. But we did it.
Which is for people that aren't involved in the product development world, like madness.
Yeah, it takes people like 6 months to years.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years are often the planning calendars for this stuff. And I know, in the interview with Laura, she talked about like for us, like I don't know what's going to be popular in 3 years. Like I know what's popular today.
Exactly.
And like that's just such a big competitive advantage. So how did you think about the kind of the structure of that team? So as it grew outside of you and Sharon, and you were leading a larger and larger team, like who were the first people? Like what were the first roles that you hired for, and what do you think, like if you were to say some of the things that propelled you guys to where you're at now, what were some of those early investments that maybe other brands weren't making? Like what were the other things that worked really well?
We kept our team so lean, but I do think that we didn't even have like an analyst at the beginning, and that was a big thing that we brought on. It gave us a lot of insight, so we weren't shooting in the dark. But and then also a lot more individual attention on each platform, like social platform. I think that was really, really helpful, because at the beginning Sharon's doing like everything visual. She's doing all of the platforms. And it was just like a lot, and so I think more specialized roles on platforms, copywriting. That's something that's so important to ColourPop, is the voice. It's
fun.
It's really fun. That is a hard role to fill. But we have Nikki Del Mundo, who currently does it. She's amazing. And that was
second shout out she's gotten.
Really?
I should give her a shout out too.
She is great at copy, and I think that's one of the key roles that we brought on earlier. Everybody on the team at ColourPop is such a rock star that when you brought them on, you're like, how did we survive before you? I think that's hard. But I think
you're wearing so many hats early on too. Like you're doing, like you said, Sharon's doing like 4 different jobs at the beginning. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, so let's get into some marketing philosophy questions. Are there any other brands that you look at that you're really inspired by, that you try to draw from, whether it's in the beauty industry, outside of the beauty industry? And it can be that you're like, I don't really pay attention to other brands. This is just kind of all I pay attention to.
Well, obviously at INH, I lean really heavily on ColourPop strategy, because they are a think tank. Outside of that, there's definitely a lot of brands that I look at. One brand that's totally random that I look at, but I do want to give them a shout out, is Starface.
Okay.
They have like 35K followers on Instagram. Their content is so original and clever, and I always am looking at them because I'm like, I need to beat this girl, because whoever's running this is so clever. And I think that stuff like that, like unique, clever, kind of like funny and cheesy is unique, and so that's somebody that I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in Girlfriend Collective right now. I love seeing what they're up to. Curology is somebody that I really look at a lot. I think they are just killing it across all channels. I see them everywhere. Like I see them on YouTube.
They're like an acne product, right?
It's an acne product, yeah. But I think they're doing an amazing job with their multi-strategy approach. Those are kind of the top 3 that I've been paying attention to lately.
Okay. And are there any other like resources that you use so for like people that want to be where you're at today? Like, are there any other areas where they can like go to like, you know, like what do you read about? How do you stay up on marketing and the industry? And like, what are your resources there?
Yeah, not for heavy petting, but actually Tribe.
Oh, yeah!
Your guys' newsletter is
Nice.
such an amazing summary, especially for the influencer space of like what other people are doing and kind of benchmarks and who they're working with. I remember when that first started coming out. I've been signed up for that for like since day one.
Oh, yeah,
I think literally day one. But that's genuinely really helpful, and I think that's really the only like recap I do for influencer space in particular is probably Tribe. And then another outlet I guess that I reference pretty often is Business of Fashion.
Oh yeah.
And they have an amazing Instagram. Like I love a lot of their articles.
I don't follow them on Instagram.
You should. They do such a great job like summarizing and making it like very clickbaity hot topics.
Yeah.
So those are probably my top 2 that I reference the most in the space.
That makes sense. Well, I love that I'm one of the top 2.
Yeah,
Or that
for
we're
sure.
one of the top 2.
Yeah.
God, terrible. Okay. All right. Let's do some quick fire. These are just for
Okay.
fun. You ready? Okay. Cable, Netflix, or YouTube? What do you watch?
Easily Netflix.
Okay.
Hands down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're Netflix generation. But I feel like, you know, our like the engineers we just hired out of school are like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? He's like, I watched YouTube. I'm like,
Yeah.
is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Like people just like click on. He's like, what do you do? He's like, well, I go to YouTube.com. I click on a video, and then videos just keep coming. I'm like, that is madness to me.
No, I can't do that.
Billion hours a day.
Wow.
Billion hours
That's
watched
crazy.
a day. Nuts.
Insane.
Okay, if you could live one place in the world other than where you live today, where would you live?
France.
France? Okay, where in France? Country, city?
I would live in southern France, probably like Aix-en-Provence, probably.
Okay, and we didn't talk about it, but you were there for like a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
Okay, French? Are you like fluent?
I was fluent. I doubt I am anymore.
Okay. I tried to learn French for like a minute, and then I realized that, you know, all these French executives are going to be much better at English than I'm going to be at French. So, like,
You don't
I'm
get
just
to
going
use
to
it
move
that
on.
often, actually, so
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Okay, favorite book and why?
My favorite book is probably, I have 2. It would either be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Ashton said the same
Are
thing.
you kidding me?
Oh my God.
Fake it.
We'll like... Yeah, fuck it. Let's try it. We'll
Okay.
fake it. We'll see if we can be actors.
I can definitely fake it. I do this. You know how many retakes you have to do in your IG story?
Yeah, I don't get that practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so fun questions, fast hitting. Let's go.
Okay.
So, what is your favorite book and why?
I would say I have 2.
Okay.
One is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
No way. That you know that Ashton just said that, right?
Seriously?
Yeah, no way. Yeah,
Oh my
we just went through the whole same thing.
gosh.
So I ripped the cover off the front because I hate
Yeah,
the name.
it's
the name
such
is
a bad name.
absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it really rubs people wrong when you first show them.
Oh my God, you're
Yeah.
like, what? Like
Yeah.
how to win friends?
Yeah.
It's awful.
No, it's so good though.
But it's like
such a good book.
I said this already, but the best part about it is that it's actually about like authenticity, and like
Yeah.
being a good person and
Yeah.
communicating and like, which is just it's just maybe that's why it works though, right? You read
Yeah.
the cover, you're like, this is terrible,
Yeah.
and then you read the book, and it's like your expectations were so low, and now
Yeah,
you're-
that's true.
Right.
You're like, this seems a little
It's like when you get
shady.
told a movie is like, oh, it's a 6.5 on IMDb. You're like, ugh. And then you watch it and you're like, this is actually pretty good.
Great. The bar was so low, it was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Expectation setting. It's important. Okay,
Yeah.
what's the second one?
The second one is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I can't even process right now who it's by. But
I don't remember, but everybody
good
should know
book.
the book. Yeah.
That's a good one. And the last one I'll say actually that I just read is Lean In by
Okay.
Sheryl Sandberg.
Sheryl Sandberg. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So good, especially I think if you're a female in the industry. I think
Yeah.
it's really great.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting about Sheryl in that book is like that book came out just prior, this is terrible, but just prior to her husband dying.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what that book was about was like leaning into your career and not
Yeah.
being afraid, and so and then having her go through this like terrible life-changing event. I haven't read the book after that, but there's another book that came out after, and it's just a really interesting situation.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to read the other one because the first one was so like she talks about him so much too.
Yeah,
How amazing he is.
well,
I
he's
can't
supposedly
even.
a really amazing, awesome person.
know.
So yeah.
It's heart-wrenching.
Okay, so what shows are you currently binge watching?
Cheer.
Oh, like Cheers, like the
It's-
old one.
No, it's new. It's called Cheer. It's
Okay.
so good. I'm not actually big. Well, I'm not a big Netflix watcher because when I get started, I have to finish. Like, it's OCD.
Yeah.
So I'll just like I don't sleep. I just watch it the whole night. So I try not to. But Cheers is a really good one. And then my second favorite, I can never just say one, I guess. Is
That's fine.
Sex Explained.
I've seen that recommended on like popular on Netflix.
Yeah.
What about it's good? Like,
it's so educational on so many, like, it's so digestible because it's a bunch of like 20-minute segments, like covering a lot of different things. There's like fertility, attraction, like everything you can think of, and so interesting. Like I always feel guilty kind of watching Netflix, but this one I literally took notes on my phone. I should show you. It's bad. It's like pages because it's so interesting. Like, I just thought that it was really educational.
Interesting. Okay. And then how would you describe your personal brand? Oh, wait. We'll do that one. How would you describe your personal brand in 3 words?
I've actually been working on kind of changing my personal branding, like as far as on social, to be more of these things, which I think I'm doing a good job. But I think that mine's very organic.
Okay.
Beauty related, because obviously that's my industry. Yeah. And I don't know how to make this one word, so I probably just won't. But
we can expand. We're expanding each category.
Okay,
so go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
My other one would be probably like animal based, maybe, just because my original passion, my number one passion, is animals. Yeah. And so I have been fortunate enough to have a little bit of a social following where then I can kind of like reflect back. So I often post like animals that are available for adoption or things like that. Like, and my dog, who, if anybody follows me on social, is the star of my social page. So animals. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. And then we'll do 2 more. Celebrity crush and why?
Ooh, I would say my celebrity crush is Max. I think it's like Max Mangilla or something like that from The Handmaid's Tale. Okay. He's not even like a main character.
I'm trying to think of who he is. I've seen the show, but I don't remember who he is.
He's like the spy kind of. He's like the assistant to the main guy. He's the driver.
Okay. God, it's been like a few years since I've watched it. I haven't watched the most recent seasons.
He's like the guy that the main character's hooking up with. Like
on the side.
Yeah, on the
one that she's not supposed to.
Right.
Oh, okay.
He's the baby daddy.
Okay, that makes sense.
But hopefully, I mean, I just unveiled like the whole movie, so
it's fine.
Yeah, teaser.
Yeah, no,
but I love him.
They'll be all right. Yeah,
he's so cute.
Okay, and then this is a funny one. So this is a total inside joke. Mostly people at Tribe are gonna get it.
Okay.
So we do Ask Me Anythings at Tribe, where we go. We'll do for an hour. People can ask anybody what questions they have on Slack, and then people have to answer it. Okay, so the running joke of the Slack is: would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? Okay. And for people who are listening, we talked about this a little bit before.
We did.
So, mostly I sent it like, hey, this is a question we might talk about. And she thought it was more about like, what would you adopt? Or like, what would you rather have?
I didn't say fight, so I thought I just said.
I didn't write fight, so I just wrote that. It just says 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck. So for you, you're like, well, yeah.
I was actually, because he asked me, he's like, oh, we have some optional questions that we might not cover at the end, and I was like, oh, I want to cover that one because it says like optional next to it, and he's like, this one about the ducks and horses, and I was like, yeah, and he was like, why? And I was like, I would love 100 duck-sized horses, and I was like, he's like, what? Because I was so excited about it, and he was like, what do you mean, why? And I was like, how cute is that? It's like a herd of Pokemon. Like, why would you not want that? And he was like, no, you're fighting them.
Makes so much sense now with your ranching background, right? Yeah. Like, you have a ranch of 100 duck-sized horses.
That sounds magical to me. I wouldn't be able to fight them. I'd be like taming them.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking out the time, Jordynn. It really means a lot to me. I think people are going to learn a lot from our conversation, and I really encourage people to check out the brand, and support your brand, and I just want to thank you again, and thank Ipsy and the team again as well for letting us use the space. And so thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be on the show. Obviously been a big fan of yours and Tribe's for a long time, so super excited to be on
We're
here.
Pumped. Number 2.
Yes,
there we go. Awesome. All right, bye guys.
Bye.
Hit subscribe now. Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Tribe Dynamics unlocks your social media influencer community. Our platform not only tracks and measures your best influencer relationships, but discovers new influencers to grow your business through earned media. Get started with a demo today at tribedynamics.com. tribedynamics.com.